You tapped your card today. You barely felt it. A coffee, a lunch, maybe something you didn't plan to buy, and the screen flashed green, a tiny sound played, and you walked away feeling fine. But the real reason you felt fine is far stranger than convenience. That painless moment was designed, not by accident. People studied exactly how your brain reacts when money leaves your hands, and then they spent decades engineering that reaction away. The ease you felt was the product. You think of debt as a number, a balance on a statement, something cold and mathematical that just sits there. But your brain has never once experienced debt as a number. It experiences it as a feeling, and that feeling has been quietly rewired underneath you. To understand how, you have to go back to a question almost nobody asks. Why does spending money hurt at all? Two researchers asked exactly that. In 1998, Drazen Prelek and George Lowenstein published a paper describing something they called the pain of paying. They argued that handing over money triggers a small, genuine sting, a flicker of discomfort that lives in the same emotional circuitry as physical pain. Your ancestors needed that sting. Resources were scarce. Letting go of something valuable was a real risk to survival, so evolution wired a tiny alarm into the act of giving things away. That alarm is not a metaphor. It is a brake. And for most of human history, that brake worked beautifully. You traded a goat. You felt the weight of the goat. You handed over coins you had carried and counted, and your hand felt them leave. The pain and the purchase happened in the same instant. Your brain could see the trade clearly. Something in, something out. Then something quiet happened. The pain and the purchase were pulled apart. This is the part nobody noticed. Modern debt did not make spending cheaper. It made spending painless. And those are completely different things. Think about what a credit card actually does to your nervous system. The good feeling, the new shoes, the full cart, the dopamine of getting something, all of that arrives right now. But the cost, the moment your money actually leaves, gets pushed 30 days into the future. The reward and the pain are no longer in the same room. Your brain feels the pleasure today and feels almost nothing when the bill quietly clears later. The brake has been disconnected from the wheel. Researchers have a name for this. They call it decoupling. The purchase and the payment are decoupled, separated in time, so the warning signal never reaches you when you need it most. You feel the yes. You never feel the cost. And it gets stranger, because this decoupling does not just remove the pain, it changes how much you are willing to spend. In 2001, two researchers at MIT, Drazen Prelek and Duncan Semester, ran an experiment that should be more famous than it is. They auctioned off tickets to sold-out sporting events. One group could only bid with cash. The other group could only bid with a credit card. Same tickets, same people, on average. The only difference was how they would pay. The credit card bidders were willing to pay up to twice as much, not 10% more. Roughly double for the exact same thing. Read that again. Simply removing the cash, simply muting the pain, doubled what people were willing to give up. The card did not change the tickets, it changed the buyer. So the question becomes uncomfortable. If muting the pain of paying makes you spend more, who benefits from muting it? And what happens when an entire industry figures that out? Here is where you have to look at your own skull, because the next part is physical. In 2007, a team of researchers, including Brian Knutson, Scott Rick, and George Lowenstein, put people inside a brain scanner and watched them shop. As participants considered each product, the scientists watched two regions light up. When people saw something they wanted, a reward center deep in the brain activated, the same kind of region that lights up for food, for sex, for winning. Anticipation. Pleasure. Yes. But then, when the price appeared, a different region activated. A spot called the insula, the same area that processes disgust and physical pain. The higher the price, the more it fired. That little flare of the insula was the pain of paying, caught on a screen, happening in real time inside a living brain. And the researchers found something remarkable. They could predict whether someone would buy just by watching the tug-of-war between those two regions, desire pulling one way, pain pulling the other. Now imagine you are designing a financial product. You have just been handed a map of exactly where the brake lies. What is the most profitable thing you could possibly do? You could quiet the insula, you could turn down the pain, and that is precisely what modern debt does. Every layer of friction that used to remind you that money was leaving has been sanded off. You used to count out bills, then you signed a slip and watched a clerk run your card, then you swiped, then you tapped, then you stopped touching anything at all. Because your card lives invisibly inside your phone, and your phone lives invisibly inside your pocket, and the whole transaction happens in a fraction of a second with a gentle, satisfying little chime. Each step felt like progress. Each step was also a step further away from feeling the cost. And then came the masterpiece. Buy now, pay later. Stop and notice what those 4 words are actually doing. They are not describing a service. They are describing the exact psychological trick the researchers identified, written out loud as a slogan. Buy now. That is the reward, delivered instantly. Pay later. That is the pain, pushed safely into a future you cannot feel yet. The product is the decoupling. The decoupling is the product. It splits a single purchase into 4 small, painless payments, each one so quiet it barely registers, so that a price your brain might have flinched it gets dissolved into a mist that never triggers the alarm at all. You are not buying a jacket. You are buying 4 tiny moments of almost no pain spread across 2 months, and 4 small stings you cannot feel will always beat one honest sting you can. But muting the pain was only half the engineering. The other half was adding pleasure on top. To understand that half, you have to meet a psychologist named B.F. Skinner. In the middle of the last century, Skinner studied how reward shapes behavior. He found something that has haunted casino designers and app developers ever since. A reward that comes every single time is boring. But a reward that comes unpredictably, sometimes big, sometimes small, sometimes not at all, is almost impossible to stop chasing. He called it variable reinforcement, and it is the most powerful behavioral hook ever discovered. It is why a slot machine is addictive and a vending machine is not. Now, look at your credit card statement. Look at the points, the miles, the cashback, the rotating bonus categories that change every quarter, the little notification that tells you that you just earned something. You are not just being numbed anymore. You are being rewarded for spending. The very act that should sting now comes with a tiny, unpredictable prize attached. Skinner's pigeons pecked a lever for unpredictable food. You tap a card for unpredictable points. The lever has simply gotten prettier. So sit with the full machine for a moment. On one side, every possible source of pain has been muted, delayed, sanded down, and split into mist. On the other side, a layer of unpredictable reward has been bolted on top of the very behavior that is quietly costing you. Pain down, pleasure up, and you, standing in the middle, feeling nothing but a smooth, pleasant little chime. This is why debt does not feel like a trap. A trap is supposed to feel like a trap. This feels like a gift. And that is the entire point. A system that hurt would warn you. A system that feels good never has to. But here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. None of this required anyone to lie to you. Nobody hid the interest rate. It is printed right there, often in bold. The terms are disclosed. The math is available. The engineering was never aimed at your reasoning. It was aimed underneath it, at the older, faster, feeling part of your brain that decides yes or no long before your reasoning ever gets a vote. You can know the interest rate is 24% and still feel nothing when you tap, because the knowing happens in one part of your mind and the tapping happens in another. There is one more cost the system hides from you, and it may be the deepest one. When you borrow, you are not really borrowing from a bank. You are borrowing from a person, a specific person. You, next month. You, next year. The version of you who has to actually pay. Researchers who study this, including the psychologist Hal Hershfield, have found that most people relate to their future self almost like a stranger. someone whose pain feels distant and abstract, easy to ignore. Debt weaponizes that gap. It lets you take the pleasure now and hand the bill to a stranger you will one day wake up and become. So what do you do with all of this? You cannot uninstall your own brain. You cannot make the tap feel like the goat again. But you can do the one thing the entire system is built to prevent. You can put the pain back. You can make yourself feel the cost on purpose. Pause before the tap and say the real number out loud. Picture the future self who has to pay and treat that person like someone you actually care about because you are about to become them. Choose, sometimes, the slower, slightly more painful way to pay, not because pain is good, but because the pain was always information. It was the break your ancestors evolved over 1,000,000 years. Removing it did not make the danger disappear. It just turned off the warning light. You tapped your card today. You barely felt it. And now you know that the not feeling was never a convenience at all. It was the whole machine, working exactly as designed, on you.